Your Excellency, President Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, Your Excellency Musa Faki Mohammed, the Chairperson of the African Union, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I, like those who have spoken before me, equally very delighted to welcome you here to the city of Kisumu. The minister has told you that Kisumu was once called Port Florence. What he did not tell you was that Florence was the wife of the engineer, Mr. Patterson, who eventually killed the man-eaters of Savo. And she was the one who laid the last sleeper at the railway at the port of Kisumu. She was called Florence Patterson. Hence, the town was called Port Florence. Now, I'm going to just make a few remarks about infrastructure that will guide our discussion here this morning at the panel. We recognize infrastructure development as a priority key ingredient for economic development, regional trade, and integration of the continent. Infrastructure is what will make or break the continental free trade area. I was appointed by His Excellency, Mr. Mohammed, as the African Union High Representative on Infrastructural Development. What are my functions? I act as a catalyst to ensure that the infrastructural projects which have been identified by the African Union are implemented on a timely basis. The importance of infrastructure has already been mentioned. I want to say that rightfully, therefore, giving Africa a world-class infrastructure is enshrined in the African Union Agenda 2063. It is projected that by the year 2050, that is about 28 years from now, Africa's population will hit 2 billion people. Well over this, that's 50% of the 2 billion people will be youth below the age of 18, and most of them are going to be living in cities. It's therefore obvious that we are already out of time to have our cities and urban areas connected by road, rail, air, ICT, and waterways. That also means we are not prepared for meaningful industrialization, urbanization, and economic growth that all depend on requisite infrastructure. As you know, in 2018, I accepted this appointment. In the same year, the African countries agreed to establish the African Continental Free Trade Area. According to INECA, the African Free Trade Area will increase the value of inter-African trade by between 15 to 25%. Right now, Africa trades very little with itself. It is estimated that intra-African trade is just about 15%. Inter-European trade is 70%. Inter-Asian trade stands at 50%. Even South America stands at 25%. But why does Africa trade very little with itself? Well, the major reason is infrastructure. They don't have adequate infrastructure that connects these African countries. As an example, Kenya lies on the East African coast. Next to Kenya, there's a country called Central African Republic. Between Kenya and the Central African Republic, there's only South Sudan. Yet, for Kenya to trade with the Central African Republic, you need to find a ship that will be able to take your goods across the Cape and along the West African coast, the Cameroonian port of Douala, and then by road to Bangui in Central African Republic. And the British are much faster there than you. And that's why there in Bangui, they drink Kenyan tea, Christian as English breakfast tea, or French coffee. So what we want to talk about today is what AU is trying to do. And we are dealing here with major infrastructure projects which have been identified under what we call PIDA, Program for Infrastructure Development in Africa. This consists of highways, high-speed railway network, ICT network, that is fiber optic network, the continent, the open air skies, the continent, and the waterways. These are the major projects in the continent. There are several highways that connect different African cities. You've got Dakar to Lagos, Lagos to Mombasa. You've got Cape to Cairo, Tunis to the Cape, through Khartoum to Djibouti. And there are missing links along those highways. There are several others. There are a total of 40 different highways that we're talking about. And then there's a high-speed railway network that connects different parts of the continent. An example I want to give you here is called LAPSET, the Lamu Port, South Sudan, and the Ethiopia Transit Corridor. That, when fully implemented, phase 1 and phase 2, because phase 1 is Lamu Port to Juba in South Sudan, the other one to Addis Ababa. The second one goes through Central African Republic all the way to Cameroon and port of Kribi, creating a land bridge that connects the Atlantic Ocean to the Indian Ocean and opening up the interior of the continent to wider trade, to Chad, to Niger, to Congo Republic and DRC, to Sudan, and then on to Egypt. There are several others that are planned. In as far as energy is concerned, Africa is energy deficient. Right now, the total installed capacity in the continent of Africa is 145 gigawatts. That is almost equal to South Korea's 130 gigawatts. But South Korea has only got a population of 52 million people. Africa has got 1 billion people, meaning that we are not fully prepared for our modernization, which is going to come whether we like it or not. So we need, therefore, to invest more in energy generation as well. We are planning also to construct 19 new ports on the continent. Also, about 20 new airports, improving the air transport in the continent. Currently, Africa, the air transport in Africa is too expensive. Some of them because of bureaucracies in the continent, structure on the ground. This is another area where we need more investment. So I want to say, conclude here, by saying that Africa has a need for more investment in infrastructure development. There is capacity deficiency. It is estimated by African Development Bank that Africa needs about $170 billion per annum to be able to meet our infrastructure needs. So the deficit stands at about $110 billion. And that's why I have proposed the establishment of African Infrastructure Fund. And we've been working here with several institutions to create this fund. We have established that there are a lot of capital lying idle on the continent, sovereign funds, pension funds, and insurance funds. So we are working towards tapping into these resources so that Africa can be self-sufficient in terms of funding, that Africa does not have to depend and rely on funding from just international financial institutions or bilaterals, some of which proved to be very, very expensive to African countries. So with these many remarks, I'm now happy to now sit down with the panelists, and then we can start this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleague, the panelists. That is the Prime Minister Raila Odinga, the High Representative of the African Union on Infrastructure. Here we have the Chairman of African Union himself, my dear friend, His Excellency Moussa Faki. The first comment on infrastructure dialogue and development dialogue today, after that presentation, the Prime Minister, shall be from His Excellency Moussa Faki, Chairman of AU. We shall all speak sitting here we are. You have the microphone so that we can dialogue among ourselves. Please proceed.
Thank you very much. Please allow me to speak in French, and I hope there is someone who is translating. If not, Mustafa, you can proceed. Merci, Monsieur le Gouverneur. D'abord, je voudrais remercier son honorable Raila Odinga, qui a été nommé par nos soins aux représentants de l'Union africaine sur la question du développement des infrastructures. Cette décision n'a pas été prise par hasard. C'est en tenant compte du background de M. Raila Odinga que nous l'avons choisi pour ses plaidoyers importants et stratégiques pour le continent africain. Je ne sais pas s'il y a traduction. Is there any translation? Does it work? Le développement des infrastructures sont une priorité. Je dirais même la priorité des priorités dans le continent africain. L'Union africaine a élaboré une stratégie sur le développement prioritaire des infrastructures en Afrique. À travers le NEPAD et les autres institutions africaines. Le constat aujourd'hui est que le continent est très peu connecté. Nous avons mis en place la zone de libre-échange continentale. Elle ne pourrait jamais être totalement opérationnelle si l'on ne connecte pas physiquement les États et les communautés économiques régionales. C'est la raison pour laquelle une des conditions de la réalisation de ce grand marché, qui est la zone de libre-échange continentale, sa réalisation ne peut être possible qu'en développant de manière conséquente les infrastructures. Les routes, les chemins de fer, les ports et les aéroports, l'énergie, les ITC, tout ceci demande des investissements. Même si les études sont prêtes, les plans sont prêts, le problème qui se pose, c'est celui du financement. Question sur laquelle a travaillé l'honorable Raila Odinga. Comment mobiliser les ressources? Il faut d'abord mobiliser les ressources internes du continent africain. Notamment les fonds de pension qui sont très importants. Comment mobiliser le secteur privé africain? Et enfin, comment développer des partenariats publics-privés et comment mobiliser nos partenaires extérieurs dans le cadre de doter le continent des infrastructures nécessaires. Voilà où se situe la problématique et c'est la raison pour laquelle je crois que l'honorable Raila Odinga est le spécialiste de la question et il a été chargé par l'Union africaine justement de trouver des pistes qui puissent nous permettre d'avancer sur ce dossier stratégique. Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Makofi Kwake, please clap for him. Thank you very much. An issue, obviously, which the chairman has emphasized, which comes under the framework of the High Representative of the AU, and on which he has worked very hard, is mobilizing resources for infrastructure in Africa and coordinating planning across our nations, especially in the energy sector, where if we synergize and encourage our interdependence, we have plenty of potential in Africa to generate power and therefore use it as an important source of development and infrastructure. Mobilization of resources and partnership is important. In this regard, let me now ask His Excellency Daniel Faure, former President of Seychelles, as a former president, what his experience was, and when he reflects today, what to come together as Africa in this particular regard. Mr. President.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I think, first of all, we need to remind ourselves that on our continent, we have institutions, some excellent institutions. We have also created our own 3 banks. We have the Afrexim Bank, we have the Trade and Development Bank, and of course we have the African Development Bank. And the African Development Bank, since the year 2013, has been providing to all countries on the continent data on where we are in terms of infrastructure development. In fact, the first data came out in the year 2013, and the last one was in 2021. In fact, it covered the period 2018 to 2020. I think it's important that we back our intervention based on facts and data. And these data show us where we are in terms of levels of development. The next step, and this is my opinion, it is important that Africa chooses the right infrastructure that will have the effective impact on the continent. And I want to give two examples here. I was recently in Botswana, where I saw a new bridge that was built. The length of the bridge is 971 meters. And the bridge crosses Botswana into Zambia, but provides a hub in terms of trade to cover two other countries, and this is Zimbabwe and Namibia. Now, for me, this infrastructure is strategic, is important. So as we move forward on the continent, we need to look at other projects. And here in Kisumu, I've been told by the governor, our moderator, as you know, Kisumu sits on the Lake Victoria, and they have been building what is called a new maritime corridor that will help citizens of Eastern Africa. And this is very good. This is the type of strategic infrastructure that is needed for our continent. The challenge that we have after COVID is where will the resources come from? Because what COVID has taught us, that we remain very vulnerable. Apart from the number one threat to the continent, which is climate change, we have other threats on our continent. So this calls for united action. And here when I talk about united action under the African Union, in the presence of our chairman, I am talking of coordination. I think our approach on the ground should not be fragmented. I think our approach on the ground needs to be strategic, but well coordinated, so that the outcomes are beneficial to our nations and population. So in answering the question of the moderator, let us make use of the three banks that we have and ensure that we have bankable projects. I repeat, bankable projects that fall within the vision that we have for our continent. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Mr. President.